Okay, welcome to Sravasti Abbey's Thursday night teachings. And let's start with cultivating our motivation. So we're here together on this night of Thanksgiving. And it's kind of obvious to cultivate gratitude. And let's think specifically about what we can be grateful for on this evening. And I borrowed some of these gratitudes from a man named Mark from the Chenrezig Project in Florida. So let's cultivate gratitude for knowing that the concept, the idea, and the possibility of bodhicitta exist. This amazing thought to help all beings and to do whatever it takes to realize it. Let's be grateful for just the mere existence of this idea in the world and that we've come into contact with it. And then we're grateful that there's a path for realizing this and that there are so many who walk this path with us. Our Dharma teachers, our Dharma friends. We're incredibly fortunate that way. And we feel deep gratitude towards His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Venerable Thupten Chödrön, our other teachers, for showing us in living human form the actualization of the potential that lies within our minds. And finally, we feel grateful toward all those who give us difficulties in life, because they provide us the opportunity to learn, grow, and to cultivate patience. So for our motivation, let's set a strong intention to use these marvelous conditions to work with our minds, to develop the 6 far-reaching practices. And we've been talking the last few weeks about generosity and ethics. Tonight we'll talk about fortitude, patience. And let's set this strong intention to cultivate these, to really help end the suffering of all beings, including ourselves. So Venerable Chödrön is still in Asia, traveling and teaching and meeting with her teachers. So we get the privilege and incredible opportunity to share some Dharma with you. So as I said, we're on the 6 far-reaching practices, and this, of course, is the method side of the path. So always we can be reminded of the 2 wings of the bird. Birds need 2 wings to fly, and so we have the method side and we have the wisdom side, and they complement each other and make it possible to take to the air, not crash to the ground. All 6 of these far-reaching practices, the generosity, ethical conduct, fortitude or patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom all interact with one another. And Venerables Semke and Tarpa have talked about that, and I'll talk a little more later about patience interacting. But back also on something that they mentioned, because we never hear these things often enough until we realize them, which means they're completely we're it, we're being it, is why are they called far-reaching? And there are several reasons which have been mentioned, but I'll review them. The first one is that there's no limit to beings, absolutely no limit. We can't count them. And so if we have these practices towards all beings, then they're limitless right there. That we're not going to leave anyone out, even the smallest insect or whatever sentient creatures we may even discover we've never discovered. They're all included, so this is incredibly far-reaching. And here's one right now. And this is my tree, and she often likes to join in the teachings. So, and it's okay if she steps on the Dharma because it's infusing into her body, so it's not a fault on her part. So the other reason these are far-reaching is that we have a far-reaching motivation with them, that our motivation is to go for full awakening. We're not going to go part way. We're not going to stop because we're tired. We're not going to compromise or negotiate around this. We're for full out enlightenment. We want to know everything. We want to end suffering for every single being. So this is the far-reachingness of these. So now I have to talk about these words, patience and fortitude. Okay, I have a confession to make. I prefer patience. And I don't know, I was thinking about it. Why? Because it's 2 syllables, not 3. Saying fortitude all the way, I thought of this as kind of a silly reason, but saying fortitude all the way through is somehow more difficult for me. But why it's even an issue is that our wonderful teacher, Venerable Chidren, has started to translate this word as fortitude. So I went back to my Catholic school training and went straight to the dictionary, and I looked up patience and looked up fortitude just out of curiosity, and it was kind of helpful. So patience is defined as bearing pain, enduring difficulty, calmness, that's the key word. I figured out why I like it. Calmness and persevering without complaint. Those are a few of the definitions of patience. Then we turn to fortitude, and it comes from the Latin fortitude, which means strong. So it has this other aspect to it, which is why Venerable prefers it. She has mentioned that it has this strength of mind that will allow us to endure pain or adversity with courage. So then I was reading her wonderful book, commercial time, Working with Anger, fantastic book. I have used it in a university class on conflict resolution, and even non-Buddhists just love this book because it has anecdote after anecdote of people in angry situations and how they use Dharma tools to solve those. So it's a wonderful book. In that book, she talks about the Sanskrit word for patience, which I have no way to pronounce this, but it's kshanti is what it looks like. It's the letter K and then shanti, kshanti. And she says in there's actually no suitable English translation for this Sanskrit word. It includes tolerance, internal calm, and endurance. So what I love about fortitude is this strength thing. What I love about patience is this calm thing. So I'm going to use the word patience, but we're going to be keeping in mind is this strong, calmness. So the first thing I thought of when I started working on this actually was my mother and my father. They're just human beings, so they both had things that were wonderful and things that were difficult. But my dad was basically a Montana cowboy, and I grew up on a dairy farm part of my life, and a horse farm. The same farm turned to a horse farm another part of my life. And my dad had that kind of quiet sort of I can take care of it calmness, and was quite a strong person. And my mother was a much more dynamo, kind of high anxiety person. And so I used to, as a little kid, really love to go do things with my dad, because he would do them very slow, very deliberately, very well. And there was always sort of a kind of a way you could hang around and talk with him while you were, helping lay chalk lines or helping saddle horses or whatever you're doing with him. And so he came to mind because that kind of calm strength, just call that to mind, like someone you've been around who has that calm strength. They come often into an emergency situation, and there's just a sense of, it's going to be okay. So that to me is what this calm strength is, and this sense that we can handle the challenge of the Dharma, all the way to full awakening. We're going to really need this quality. Okay, the other thing to say right now is this calm strength is not passive. It's wide awake. We get kind of mixed up in America. It's sort of like if you're not on steroids and you're not like, blasting away, then you must be passive. But this is not like this. This is a very awake, aware kind of quality that knows the most skillful action to be taken. And I was trying to think like this quality of being calm and very forceful at the same time. And I keep thinking of certain kind of people, and the obvious one is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I mean, he's been thrown out of his country, he's a refugee, his people have been and continue to be murdered and tortured and deprived of their religious rights, and he has this very calm, forceful strength about it. He doesn't give up the struggle. He goes around the world and organizes on their behalf and educates, and at the same time, he's so clear that the Chinese are not the enemy. The Chinese people are not the enemy. And I was with some Tibetans once who told me that they wanted to organize a boycott against China the way that people had done for South Africa. And His Holiness said no, because that could harm the Chinese people, and they are not our enemies, and we do not want to harm them. So his thinking is this kind of very strong, very calm, very clear, very aware, and it's very broad. It's like takes into account everyone involved. It's not just, I'm patient about the Tibetan people, but it's what do the Chinese people need? What do the Americans need? What do the Tibetans need about this? And he's got a long, long view, which is the other thing patience gives us, is this long view. We got to open up to kind of go, wow, this could take a while, but doing it right, with full out compassion is worth taking the time. So that's what I get from this kind of quality. Robert Thurman, there's something on the web right now by him. You can probably just Google him and Google Occupy Wall Street. And he gave a talk, and he's calling it kind of the need for cool heroes. Cool. And I thought, yeah, that's that patient, strong, forceful hero, that we don't anymore need these overheated heroes that are blasting away. We need someone with these cool kind of minds. So also thinking about this, a story came to mind that really went to my heart one time. I was listening to a presentation on the Middle East, and I thought this story about this Palestinian woman really captured the quality of patience also. So she was being interviewed by a journalist who went into Palestine, and it was one of the more active, kind of violent times where homes are being bombed and people are being killed on both sides. And this interviewer from the West said to her, "You've lived in this country that's been at war for decades now. How can you stand it? How do you manage?" And she just reportedly, I didn't see this, but turned to him and very calmly and said, "Well, in my heart, I've never gone to war against anyone." And there it is. This is this mind heart, undisturbed, whether all hell's breaking loose or not. It's a mental attitude. So this woman had kept she had peace. She was a peace zone in the middle of war zones. And that's strength of mind. When I'm sure all around her there were, you know, people encouraging her to be angry and angry people, and she was just like, I'm not having any of it. So I really see that as one of the indications of when this shows up. So let's look now at some kinds of patience, and this is taken from Geshe Sopa's commentary on the Lam Rim called Steps on the Path to Enlightenment. He lists several of them. The patience of disregarding harm done to you. So harm is done and you just don't take it so personally. You just don't, it's not all about me and you and them and us. And he says this includes stopping my impatience with those that harm me. Harm comes, but I can stop my impatience. Stopping my wish that harm would come to them. This is so huge, this impulse to revenge. How much do we hear it? I was just, the state of Idaho just executed a prisoner, and it's the first one they've done in 17 years. And even before that, they hadn't done anybody for, I think it was over a decade or something. And just reading some of the reports after the execution occurred, the family of this man had murdered 3 people, and he had admitted that. And to his credit, and I hope it helps him through the bardos and into a good next life, he expressed nothing but regret at the end. His last statements were basically regret, and then a statement to his mom. But reading what the family of the victims said, like, you know, they were gonna somehow feel better, like this is finally closure and finally this is done and we're so tired of this execution being put off. And it was just like, you know, the day after, there's that impulse to revenge, but the day after, what are you holding? What do you have in your hands and your heart? You don't have your focus back. And all you've got is this sadness and this anger. And where's that going to end? So Geshe Sopa was saying one of the most important parts is stopping this wish, this impulse to revenge in your own mind. He also lists the patience of accepting suffering as a part of life. This is where we are. These are the kind of bodies we've taken on. This is the kind of minds we've cultivated from beginningless time. And if you don't think of beginningless time just in this life, what kind of mind have you cultivated around the whole issue of anger, irritation, impatience, that kind of pride that comes up, you know, I should be first in line, everybody get out of my way, you know. I know I've cultivated plenty of going the wrong direction with this. So this acceptance of suffering, not in a way like I'm a doormat, but just as a fact. You know, these are the facts, you know. So we can't get well till we diagnose where we really are. So these are the facts of where we are. So he's looking at it like that. And in fact, he talked about it like, you know, you're going to have to diagnose your illness first, and then you can get well. So part of the illness is, oh, this is a place of suffering. So, you know, I need to get some patience about this. This is going to come all the way right along until I'm like purifying and getting my own mind out of it. And then he talked about a kind of patience that seeks out the truth of a situation. I really liked reading about this one because I hadn't heard it quite so much, but the patience to pursue the truth of reality, to keep learning about dependent arising and emptiness, but also just in a common, conventional way, the patience to actually diagnose a situation correctly. So, well, obvious example, you know, 9/11 happened and the US Congress and people didn't take the patience to go, wow, let's secure the borders, let's, you know, ground our airplanes. Now let's figure out what happened. So our response, it will actually lead us to some sanity in the world. That just didn't happen. And that's on a big scale, but we don't do this even on a small scale. You know, something goes wrong and we react. We're like that. But this is the patience to go, I need to kind of sit with this, and not to be foolish, because you do have to, you know, set your borders, be safe, make a good place, but then the patience to kind of really consider options and and include people's opinions that are going to be affected and figure out what to really do. So now I wanted to talk for a minute about how patience interacts with the other practices. So I'm just going to do this fairly quickly, but it's a really good way so that, as Venerable says, we don't get these 6 far-reaching attitudes in boxes, you know, like now I'm doing this, now I'm doing that. So patience interacts with generosity. We can see that. There's really quite a good story Venerable tells that she went into one of her teachers, I can't remember which one, but early on when she was young and in India and Nepal, and she had a beautiful thing that I think someone had given her, and she presented it to her teacher and was so like really glowing about, my teacher got this from me and it's wonderful and maybe I'm a little special, you know. And she, after the audience was over, she went out and sat down on a bench kind of out front, and someone else went in and that person came out carrying the gift. So obviously the teacher had turned around and given it to her. And this is a moment for patience, you know, not to go, you know, what am I, chopped liver? You know, I mean, but to really give generously with patience is, no matter what the response is, you know, you're fine with it. You see it with calm and you're good with it. Patience with ethics is just that persistent strength. That would probably be more to me the fortitude, that you can hang in there when you're being tempted, you're being cajoled, you're being, you know, pressured by friends, just one more drink, you know, one more dance, one more relationship, one more whatever. You need an iPod, an iPad, a Kindle, whatever they all are. So this persistent strength to be very clear about your goals. Just think of the kind of fortitude it takes to beat an addiction, any serious addiction. I mean, that's what we're talking about there with ethics. Patience with joyous effort is this, I think it's more patience with myself to kind of get over this laziness of sloth, the laziness of discouragement, and the laziness of busyness. So it's kind of almost like being patient with your own inner child, you know, who, if you're anything like mine, there's this constant juggling act. I'm discouraged one day, the next day I'm busy, and the next day I'm like, I want to just go to bed and sleep all day. So being kind of a patient parent towards that, who is firm and clear, but not beating myself up. And then patience with developing concentration and wisdom. I don't think I even need to kind of go over that. It's going to be a long ride. I mean, some of you may be a lot quicker, but I think it's going to take us a little while. All those reactions, you know, that we have, even hearing about emptiness, fear comes up in the mind. So we're really afraid of the truth, or we get discouraged, like, oh my gosh, I can't even understand this, you know, forget it. Or we just get frustrated with this idea of, you know, countless eons, is it 3? Countless gradients. Is it 3? I'm not counting them because it's so many. Just put your next step in front. So, okay, so how do we cultivate patience? This is, well, this is what we need to do. So number 1, folks, it's a mind training, surprise. The workshop's always in the mind. Lama Yeshe says it over and over and over. There's nothing else to do but to get to know our own minds. So we have to look at anger, which patience is the antidote to. I was also thinking today, in some ways, it's fear and anger are so close that patience is really a good antidote to fear too. But so we have to understand anger in all of its flavors in our minds, because just think about it. Whenever you're even irritated, like just slightly irritated by something someone's doing, are you able to conjure up bodhicitta? I was kind of watching that over the last few days, you know. I was like just slightly irritated at something someone's doing, and I'm going, okay, can I get bodhicitta? And it was like, no, they can't be in the mind at the same time. They're they're mutually exclusive. So even those little weird things that we're doing, those judgments, those little niggling things, you know, they block out our bodhicitta, our kindness, our compassion. Okay, so let's start looking at anger. First thing we'll do is look at the causes of it. And Geshe Sopa writes, anger is not the nature of anyone. That was such a relief. So, you know, no matter who you are or what your stick is, and when I came to the Abbey, I was pretty clear, and I think I was right. My stick was attachment. I'm really big on attachment. It's the thing that when I'm on the cushion, my mind just goes off on attachment. It doesn't go off on anger much, but that doesn't mean I don't have it. Boy, I've learned that I do. What was true was I didn't understand the kind of anger I had, and since I've been in a quieter place and in a supportive community, now I see the kind that just, I have this sort of quite calm and then pow, it just flares up. And it also kind of goes away pretty quick, but it's not pretty when it's there. So this was good to find out. It's not the true nature. People are not born, these are Geshe Sopa's words, wanting to hurt someone else. So anger always comes from causes and conditions. So then he asks, he says, when someone's angry at you or you're angry at someone, just ask yourself this question. Are they or you in control? Or do they have self-control? Can I switch my anger on and off? Like, oh, I don't want to be angry all day. Flip off the switch. Okay, so if you think you can do that, I invite you to try that. Just flip the anger switch off and have no anger that day. And there you are, you're in complete control. So we are controlled by our afflictions. And I remember when Venerable first said this, I hated hearing that. I really hated hearing that. And I've thought about why. And a big part of it is that I grew up with a lot of psychology. I took a lot of psychology courses. I learned peer counseling. I was an attorney, but in a legal aid setting, there was all kinds of like dealing with your clients' emotions workshops. And somehow through all of those, I had this idea that, oh yeah, we're pretty much in control of our emotions. If we aren't, we can get in control pretty quickly. And I liked that idea. You know, I really liked thinking that that was possible. But I have had to look at reality a little closer and go, wow, this stuff just rises up and can blindside you. And so why is it like that? So Geshe Sopa looks at several, and Venerable talks about this too in working with anger, several causes for this. One is our predisposition from beginningless time. We just have this predisposition. It doesn't mean it's our inherent nature, it is not, but it is a predisposition to this. So it's kind of like if you've walked down a path a lot, you're going to have a groove there. And this is kind of how we are with this anger. The second is the condition of there being an object to be angry at. So that can be your own self, by the way. You can be alone and be angry, but there has to be some kind of object. And then the key thing is this wrong perception of this object, this totally wrong perception. This wrong perception, of course, is this ignorance, and it projects something there that's not there. Now, there are so many levels of ignorance. I mean, right now, in this very moment, we're all projecting all over the place. And I like to use Lama Zopa's, no, it's Lama Yeshe's quote that we're hallucinating all the time. We don't need to be taking any hallucinatory drugs because we're just hallucinating all the time. I think you're all very solid, and I have a very solid reputation to uphold here. And I've only got 25 more minutes to do it. So, and those are solid too. And everything's quite solid about this. Well, that's just, it's just not how it is. I know I've heard that, but I don't live in that. I think that there's a camera and there's Venerable Yeshe and, you know, it's all just like that. So there's that level of ignorance. But this is kind of a level on top of it, even in just conventional reality. We're not even talking a mistake about the ultimate nature of things. Just in conventional reality, a I'll tell a story on myself because we used it in nonviolent communication. But Venerable Chinny and I have had a lot of fun in the kitchen over the years, and we've really used this well as good Dharma friends to work through some real things with each other. And one of the latest ones where my crazy mind of anger just flared up was I made breakfast one morning, and I kind of knew I was boiling too many eggs, but I had this sort of attitude of, we'll eat them, you know, I want them, and we haven't had enough protein, and we'll eat them at lunch, and we'll eat them at, you know, medicine meal. So I probably boiled, I don't know, 13 eggs or something. It was kind of a lot. So towards the, I think it was kind of towards the end of breakfast at cleanup time, Venerable Chinny came walking in the kitchen. I was in there, and she had the pan of eggs, and there was only maybe half that had been eaten. And she just set them down, and she saw me there, and she just went. That's all she did. And I went ballistic in my head. I mean, it was like I just went crazy. And it was like, she's always criticizing me. She. I mean, it just started on this instant story. It was just like all over the place. And later, she and I unpacked this. And what I found was she didn't even know I had made breakfast. That's the exaggerated, mistaken mind that just goes. You know, there was the predisposition, the object, you know, and off my story goes. And, you know, when you look at what the person did, you just can't even blame them. You know, I would have loved to blame. I was blaming. But when you say, we're practicing in nonviolent communication, you would just say, what did the person do? You make a bare observation. The person came in and went, well, that's grounds for getting furious. I mean, anyone would get furious. So, you know, any one of you, she might have walked in and done that, and you might have started counting with her or saying, yeah, there's a lot of eggs or whatever. But, you know, this is the whole thing. So I was thinking about that example, and then I read this statement by Geshe Sopa, which was quite fitting. He said, anger is like a mental illness that individuals cannot control. There would have been no way, even if you had said to me in that moment, stop being angry or your leg will fall off. I could not have stopped. I could not. So it is really an inability to control it at times. And their actions are directed by an internal enemy. This is really important to get. When we're angry, we are under the control of an internal enemy. It is no one out there. It is definitely not Venerable Chinny counting eggs. It is the oppressive internal self-centeredness that has grabbed me and is running off with my mind and heart. And I really don't want that anymore. So the person who's angry has to do, this is what Geshe Sopa says. He says it so strongly, it's really helpful. You have to do whatever that internal enemy says. You become the servant of your hatred. This is really gross, but this is what happens. This is what we want to get free of. So we really need to, once again, like identify the thief in the house. You know, we can't throw the thief out until we identify who it is. So this is the thief in our house, our heart house. And he goes on to say, this person is pitiful and needs our help, not our anger, not our retaliation. This is our kind mother. I the mother thing doesn't work with the anger thing for me. So what I often do is, this is my kind little brother who's like going off on a tantrum, and it's time to kind of help him, you know, pull himself together here. And so you can use, you know, my friend, my mother, my sister, my brother, whatever helps your mind do that. Chandrakirti, cited by Geshe Sopa, says, wise people understand that anger is not the person's fault. The problem's the mental affliction, so they don't fight with others. And Geshe Sopa, of course, says the obvious thing, but again, so clearly, this is going to be very hard work. We're changing habits of many, many lifetimes. It's a predisposition towards wrong perception, and then this jumping into elaboration. My story is true. And as a counselor said to me once, well, you can be right or you can be close, meaning you can be compassionate. You get to choose. You want to be right, you want to win the fight, you get to be right. You won the court argument, okay? And you walk out of the courtroom, and how good does everyone feel about you? You're right, and you're not close. You're pretty much like, yeah, okay, you won. So this is a really important thing to get that this is what's going on in our heads. Again, he points out the basic cause is this ignorance of the entire situation, and that we're playing a very bad, inaccurate B movie. You know, there's me, there's you, you're hurting me, and I must stop you by any means I can, and if I can't stop you now, then I'm going to get you back later. And this is the movie that we play over and over. We see this so much in international affairs, but among families, you know, internally in nations, inside of all of our groups. So Venerable also reiterates that the causes of anger are the seed or this predisposition, but she's very careful to say it's not like the way we think in Western psychology that, oh, I've got anger lurking in there ready to burst out at any moment. It's not like that. It's just a predisposition toward it, that when the causes and conditions are correct, it will rise up. The seed, the habit, this inappropriate attention, which I want to talk about a little more, attachment and how close it is to anger, and then the object that appears unpleasant. So let's talk a minute about this inappropriate attention. I have this in the morning, and I've been really trying, and I think with some success. I'm feeling pretty good about it, training my mind away, but not to blame my mom at all, but because I adore my mom, but I grew up with a mom who would get up in the morning and go in the kitchen, and she wasn't so happy. And she'd start sort of banging pots and pans around, you know, like, and she'd make a marvelous breakfast. But it was kind of like, you wake up to this like certain energy. And I've noticed, of course, that I have that energy in me. I had it before I met my mom, you know. I mean, why did I pick that mom? But, why was I drawn into that kind of a scene? But when I was young, of course, I blamed her, and I was innocent. But now, my mom's not around. She's been dead a few years, and I haven't lived with her for a long time, and I wake up with this kind of mind that'll go, it starts right away, and it kind of wants to pick on somebody. You know, I've just kind of really been watching it. It wants to pick kind of a little fight, not a big one, but just a little fight. And of course, I've learned with Venerable's coaching, you just switch right away, take refuge. As soon as I get conscious in bed, I take refuge or call on Tara. You know, like fill the room with green energy, whatever. But you know, then it'll kind of lapse back into and then by the time I get to the bathroom, what I've learned to start doing in the bathroom is gratitude for every single thing I see. I'm grateful there's a sink. I'm grateful there's water. I'm grateful for the toilet. I'm grateful I've got warm clothes to put on. And it starts shifting it right away. But here's this habit, you know, towards this lack of patience and yeah, it makes me wonder what it's been like living with me, especially for the people. You all don't need to say anything. I mean, those other people before I lived with you, because now I'm patient. Yeah, so it's just inappropriate attention was my point, you know. I can get up in the morning and I can be paying attention to be grateful for clean, fresh water and be wishing that everyone in the world would be able to turn a faucet on like that and have this. Or I can be, yeah, you know what they said to me yesterday, you know, and off I can be, or it's cold, or I blah, blah, blah. So which mind do you want, you know? It's all about training it. Okay, so the other thing to remember whenever we talk about these stories about our afflictions and obscurations is that the true nature of the mind is this clarity and awareness. These things we're talking about are just clouds going by. So we don't need to cling on to them. We can just help them move right along, you know, little wind. Lama Yeshe says even air pollution can't ruin the air. The nature of the air is pure. The pollution's something different from it. So we never give up on that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some more methods about cultivating this patience, this calm, cool, strong way to be. So Shantideva, one of the methods comes from him. And again, this has a little bit to do with this, like asking questions about the person being in control or not. But he takes a little bit of a different tack on it. And he says, when someone's coming at you with anger, ask yourself, is this person's inherent nature? Is this their inherent nature? So just sit with that, you know. Do you know anyone who's inherently angry? That would mean that would be their only way of being. Well, we know from texts and study, no one's inherently anything. But it can appear like that sometimes. This person, the anger is inherent, they are inherently angry. But we know it's not that way. The person's angry sometimes, not angry other times, peaceful sometimes, happy sometimes, sad sometimes. So then that means this anger is a temporary occurrence. So why would we get mad at someone for a temporary occurrence? That's also so like our own. No reason for the anger, okay? So if it's temporary, it's like getting mad at clouds going by in the sky, or a cloudy day instead of a blue sky day. I'm just furious about it. Well, okay, but I'm not going to change it, and it's just going to make you unhappy. If it's their true nature, if it really was their true nature, well, that's like getting mad at fire for burning things up. You know, we know it's not people's true nature, but even if it was, why would we get angry at someone if it's their true nature and they can't change it? You know, it's not going to help. I remember this moment in the car. I don't know why I put this story right in here, but I must have had a point, so I'll say it. It says, go to the story. I remember clearly this moment in a car with my ex-husband, who's still my good friend. And we used to have some pretty interesting fights. And, but then, after a while, the fights were not very interesting. They were very kind of scripted. You know, I mean, I think a lot of couples fall into this. It's like you almost know, now this gets said, now that gets said, now this gets said, but you kind of can't stop, you know, because of the habit. And we were headed into one of these kind of very patterned arguments. I could sort of feel it. But the thing was that I had really been listening to Venerable's tapes more at the time and really thinking about my own anger and not wanting, kind of starting to think I don't really want to go that way anymore. So we're in the car and this pattern starts like he says A, I say B, he says C, I say D. Now it's going like this. And all of a sudden the Dharma just came in my mind like boom, like do you want to do this? And so I didn't want to do it, but my anger was already flaring. And so it was this kind of horrific moment where it was painful physically. It was like, I don't want to go that way, and I can't go that way, and I don't want to go that way. And so I fell completely silent, which was unusual. You may not believe this about me. And in doing that, my husband was still going on C, D, E, F, G, not even waiting for my, my parts. And then all of a sudden he noticed the silence, and he's really a very kind, generous person most of the time. And so he got silent, and then he said, "What are you doing over there?" and I said, "I am trying really, really hard not to be angry." And it was amazing. It just stopped everything. It just stopped everything. And so I really know this power of the being able to work this. You have to work it on the cushion. That only happened because I worked on the Lam Rim anger meditations and then thought about it and then made some intention that I didn't want to do this again. And but then it happened, So it's just the way the Dharma can actually help. So I remember what the point of that was that we have to do the things that are true about every single piece of Dharma. We have to hear about it, we have to study it, we have to read about it, we have to read Geshe Sopa, we have to read Venerable, we have to read Lama Zopa, we need to read Lama Yeshe. You can read anybody you want. Pema Chodron, Tenzin Palmo, but read about these things, study them, listen to the teaching, and then think about them in your life. Oh yeah, wow, that whole thing with the eggs, that was definitely anger out of control, That was me making up a story. So we have to apply it and then go to the meditation cushion and meditate on them. And if we don't do those, we aren't going to integrate this. It's going to be from here up. It's going to be very interesting, many outlines, many quotes, blah, blah, blah. But if we can't do it, then, then we're going to be hanging around cyclic existence a long, 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 long time and not very happy while we're doing it. So, we could be happier while we're doing it too. Okay. Now, here's some more on exaggerating the negative. I just want to do a little time check here. Okay. Oh, yeah, okay. This is a little bit from Venerable in Working with Anger, and she's talking about what we need to do with anger, and this was very interesting to me when I first read it. We neither suppress it nor express it. Now, when I first read that, I thought, well, what can, you're stuck then. You can't express. I mean, I learned to pound pillows and hit with batakas. And bataka was like this padded thing. This may sound very funny to all of you from some other generation, but in the 70s, we would work out our anger with these big padded things. Did any of you do this? You did. Yeah, and you did. Yeah, and you could whack at each other. I mean, you would agree to this, but they were big, soft, I know it sounds so crazy now, but they were big, soft batons. They would be kind of fun. And you would just like, I am so angry, and you just kind of smack at the other person, or onto the floor with them, or onto a pillow. What we found now is we were just rehearsing our anger, but there was this idea, well, you'll vent it and you'll get it out. Didn't work so well. But at any rate, that's one of the things. It was like you need to express it, you need to yell, you need to, one counselor told my mother, throw dishes at the wall, and she did. She busted like a whole thing of dishes. I stood and watched her. I thought it was pretty interesting. But, this is just people trying, right? Compassion without wisdom. But this, where am I? Oh, yeah, suppressing and expressing. So it doesn't mean that we're not going to express it at all. It means not expressing it in ineffective ways, okay? So an effective way to express it may be you have a good friend and you say to them, I just need to vent a little bit here, And if they're a really good friend, they're not going to let you go on and on and on and blame. What they're going to do, especially if they're a Dharma friend around here, they're going to start directing you back towards As this one judge used to say, oh, you're pointing at everyone, but 3 fingers are pointing in the right direction, back at you. So let's look at those. But it's really, it doesn't mean ignoring it, because then you're going to get into this thing of it can lurk around, it can grow, it can get a little poisony, and you don't notice it's there. Ignoring it means you're just not paying attention to your mind training, because you're not knowing your mind. You need to know, yeah, I am really worked up about this, or I'm scared, or I'm anxious, or I'm whatever, you know. But it's like knowing it's there. So not suppressing it, because what that does is set up a cycle of, I'm not angry. I'm not a person who's angry. Anger's bad. I'm good. Therefore, I'm never angry. That's not a very good, what do you call those? What?
Syllogism.
Yeah, or whatever. It's a formula. Yeah, like a math formula, you know, A, B, C. But yeah, so anger's just anger. It's just a thing that comes in the mind. We need to not label it good, bad. It's not useful. It does cause suffering. But we need to get out of this good, bad so that we can find ways to acknowledge it and sit with it. I think now of Geshe Kelsang, who has been so helpful to me from the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics. He teaches in Portland every so often, and so I've sat with him a number of times. And one thing he has always said about anger or any aversion or attachment, he says, let it dance in front of you. Let it dance in front of you. You know, and he just means let it be there. You know, let it say whatever it wants to say. You know, let it run all over the room. You know, you sit there. You sit there. You be calm. And just let it say what it wants to say. Let it be how it wants to be. And sure enough, it just wears itself out. You know, sure enough, it is like a cloud going through the sky. Sure enough, it's not solid. Sure enough, it changes while it's doing its little dance, you know. And so you want to know it like that. I heard another Lama, I'm not sure who it was, I can't remember, say, invite it in for tea. Sit it down, you know, serve whatever comes. Whatever you're in your meditation, whatever comes up, invite it in for a cup of tea. Oh, hi, have some tea. Tell me what you had to say. Oh, okay, well, now we're bored with that. Bye. You know? So what they're talking about is not grabbing it, making it solid, and then getting lost in that whole thing and feeding it, you know, feeding it. Okay, I don't have much time left. Let me see. I've got 4 more pages. Ooh. Let's see what's the most important. Let's see what's the most important about that. So you sort of get this idea of this, don't express in the ways like scream, yell, cause more suffering. Don't suppress, because that also causes more suffering. Our goal is to end suffering. So we need to know our mind, know our anger, accept that we get angry sometimes, accept that there's help and ways to deal with it, know the antidotes, apply them, keep trying to apply them, use some fortitude and some strength. And that way we get rid of them. Well, I have to say this part. There's this incredible piece about the value of the so-called enemy. So this goes back to that, the motivation thing I was saying, let's be grateful for those that give us difficulty. And it's the so-called enemy because, of course, we're simply labeling a situation that's rising. Someone else might look at it from the outside and they wouldn't even say there is an enemy. But we're saying, he is my enemy. And then we're labeling that person, and then we feel we don't have very many tools, so the tool becomes retaliate or go around behind and do a passive-aggressive move, like talking about them behind their back. You know, we have just very limited tools. But Geshe Sopa, Venerable, they're all talking about the value of this person, and His Holiness does this too. This is the seeing, and it's not easy. We really have to meditate on this before it'll work and do it in a calm place where this isn't, you know, you don't have anger coming up. But imagining a time you're angry, and then seeing what that situation taught you. How did you grow in strength out of it? How did you grow in patience out of it? How did you grow in knowledge of your limits? That's the one I've really noticed, that when someone's being difficult to me or being a so-called enemy, they're really showing me where I'm stuck. Because if I wasn't stuck, I would never even label them that way. I wouldn't even see the situation that way. I'm seeing it that way because I'm stuck. What they're doing is holding a big old mirror up and saying, you're stuck right here, so work on it. So this is the wonderfulness, and we can actually get to a point where we thank them for this. That seems a bit out there. But I had a situation in a work situation once where now, years later, I truly, truly thank this person who at the time, I would say, put me through hell for 18 months, including suing me, reporting me to the union, passing out things about my reputation, all kinds of stuff. And I had venerable children to guide me through, or I'm sure I would have done all the wrong retaliation kind of stuff. But I really just stayed with what she said. And the two things she said to me is, this is just karma unfolding because you've done similar things to people in the past. And boy, that was a great lesson. I was like, boy, have I been this cruel? Have I been this judgmental? Have I been this mean? And it was like, must have been, you know, otherwise it wouldn't be coming around. So one thing she said is, this is karma. And that thought is very helpful when something difficult's coming at you. This is karma. And what she also said is, it's karma purifying. And she said, the way it'll purify, it depends on how you meet it. You can purify it, or you can carry it on and make it worse. So I was like, I'm done with this. I never want to have to go through this again. So it was like, I have to be clean, clear with this person, not talk about him behind his back. I was about 85% good at that. Not retaliate, not say anything to him that's off base. And I really did pretty well with that. And I think a lot got through. But the second thing she said to me is, what did she say? It's karma and, oh yeah, back to the point. It's karma, and the second thing she said is, never, ever think of him as an enemy. Do not take on that he's an enemy. Don't even put it in your mind that he's an enemy. No matter what he does, says, appears like, or anything. Just do not frame this in that way. That was quite hard to do. I literally used to have to walk around my office, because we worked together for 18 months after this all started. And then he finally had to leave through my boss, who helped me. But at any rate, 18 months of doing this, but I would just have to go around with a mantra of, you are not my enemy, you are not my enemy, you are not my enemy, literally, because things would happen one after the other. This is not my enemy. And then Venerable would say to me, fill the whole place with green Tara energy constantly, just mantra, and that was really helpful, really, really helpful. So I think the final thing is the final antidote is seeing the emptiness and dependent arising of the situation. And this is true whether it's attachment, whether it's anger, whatever we're working with. But Venerable has a couple very pithy questions about this. When you're feeling angry, she'll just say, ask yourself, who is it that's so angry? Who is it that is so angry? And that throws yourself back on exploring, who am I? You know, and then you start noticing the anger is just not so solid. It's there, then it's not there, then it's there, then it's not there, then it doesn't even have the same flavor all the time. Or she'll say, find your anger, where is it? So I start looking around in my body, well, it feels like heat. Oh, but the heat's already going, well, it must be a thought. Well, which thought, you know? And it just starts evaporating by applying that. Of course, we can always refrain from acting. That's not a very Western thing to do, but again, it's this kind of taking the time to consider the situation, to say, oh, all of that happened, now I'm going to sit down and think about this. I don't have to act right now. I don't have to say anything back. I don't have to do any particular thing. I'll end with the advantages of patience. Look at His Holiness the Dalai Lama, his stature in the world, the way he's beloved by so many. And one of the greatest qualities that he exhibits constantly is huge amounts of patience. It's like a huge ocean that is just so wonderful to even be around. It's non-harming. Nagarjuna says, here are one of the results of cultivating patience is a radiance. Everyone finds you likable and you have lots of good friends. Patience helps us slow down and gives us the ability to have insight into what's going on with people and animals. We were talking over animal situations at the Abbey recently, and I was thinking about how many components of patience were in there. To be around animals, you really have to have this quality, and for animals to like to be around you, to come up to you. Was it a chipmunk or squirrel? A chipmunk that came up to Venerable Semke would have to sense some kind of peace and calm there, or wouldn't do it, you know. Yeah, and the way that Venerable Semke is with the turkeys, you know, there's a lot of what's under that is this wide open patience. So we can see what's going on with them, perceive the situation, and take actions that make sense. So you won't get to hear the prisoner's story. You can read it on page 30 in Working with Anger, and also how to deal with criticism. So final quotes. Geshe Sopa says, if we train ourselves to desire, I like that he used that word, we train ourselves to desire to do these practices. We have to want to do them. We'll be able to accomplish the practice of patience in the future. And in future lives, patience will become easier and easier. Just imagine that, like having patience be easy. And it will take less effort, become familiar and comfortable, and then be completely natural, just a completely naturally patient person. We have many, many models of this in the world, and one I haven't mentioned is Lama Zopa, his reaction to his current physical situation. One story I heard is that as he's been doing physical therapy, he makes the physical therapist stop if they're outside because he doesn't want to walk on the ants. So they have to stop and remove all the ants from the sidewalk before he'll go on his physical therapy walk. So that is so loving and so patient. And he's so patient with his situation. I think we'll end with this quote from one of the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas by Togme Sangpo. And that is, to Bodhisattvas who want a wealth of virtue, those who harm are like a precious treasure. Therefore, towards all, cultivate patience without hostility. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So may we all realize this. And thank you for being with us. And sorry we don't have time for questions, but I probably wouldn't have the answers. And next week, we will have Venerable Samten, and she will be talking on joyous effort, which I think she's nearly an expert at from my observations. So, okay. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born am no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezig, may you stay until samsara ends. May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances,
Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. May the deeds of explaining and practicing the Dharma, done by groups supporting the teachings and their upholders, who spread the view of dependent arising and non-violent actions in the 10 directions, and especially at Sravasti Abbey in the West, flourish.